Welcome to Asian Ghost Story. If you love mysterious and chilling tales from across Asia, you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on the haunting stories that will keep you up at night. I remember the night Nam decided to take a stroll across the CT Bridge in Vietnam. It was a cool, calm evening, and the bridge, which is usually bustling during the day, was strangely serene under the night sky. The lights from the bridge reflected off the river below, creating a magical sight. I can imagine how Nam must have felt, completely unaware that this seemingly peaceful night would change everything he believed in. He was excited to meet his girlfriend, Lin, whom he hadn't seen in a while due to his busy work schedule, and tonight was meant to be a romantic reunion, a chance for them to reconnect. But fate had other plans. Lin's father worked along the How River, buying and delivering firewood on his boat. One ordinary day, as he passed near the foot of the CT Bridge, something unusual caught his eye among the drifting water hyacinths, a bright pink helmet. It was lying there, half submerged, yet strangely pristine, as if it had just been lost. Curiosity got the better of him, and he pulled his boat closer, picking up the helmet and wondering if it belonged to someone who had fallen off the bridge. He took it home, cleaned it up, and left it on a shelf. He didn't think much of it at the time, but I could sense there was an unease lingering in the back of his mind, as if he had brought something home that didn't belong. That very night, Lin had a bizarre and terrifying dream. She dreamt of a young girl, her face pale and emotionless, gripping Lin's legs, trying to pull her somewhere. I could almost feel Lin's fear, the cold, bony hands, the empty stare of the young girl, and the feeling of being dragged to an unknown place. When she woke up, her heart was pounding, her legs heavy and sore, as if the dream had been real. She told her mother about it, but her mother just laughed it off, blaming it on Lin's overactive imagination. Still, the dream left Lin shaken, and she couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that lingered throughout the day. Even during her classes, she felt a strange chill, glancing over her shoulder more than once, as if someone was watching her. Nam, on the other hand, was excited about finally meeting Lin. He rushed from Long En as soon as work allowed, eager to see her again. They decided to meet up and take a ride together. Lin, unaware of what her father had brought home, grabbed the pink helmet to wear that night. I can picture Nam's smile as he noticed the helmet, complimenting how nice it looked, completely unaware of the dark connection it held. The helmet seemed to give off an odd aura, but Nam brushed it aside, attributing it to his overexcitement about seeing Lin again. They rode off into the night, the cool breeze brushing past them as they headed across the bridge. Lin suggested visiting a late-night food stall rumored to serve the best ghost noodles, which only opened after midnight. They laughed at the name, deciding to check it out. As they waited on the bridge, Lin leaned against the railing, her silhouette framed by the shimmering city lights. At first, the stillness of the night felt comforting, but soon the atmosphere grew tense. The sound of the river below seemed to fade away, and the air grew cold, as if something unseen was creeping closer to them. Suddenly, Lin spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "Nam, do you think that spirits really exist?" Nam chuckled, trying to brush away the tension. "What? Are you scared of a little ghost story now?" he teased, but Lin looked serious, her eyes wide and worried. She explained the dream she had the previous night, the strange girl who had grabbed her leg. Nam tried to joke about it, but even he could feel the heaviness in the air, almost suffocating, as if the night itself was holding its breath. He tried to reassure her, but his words felt hollow, their laughter lost in the stillness around them. I imagine Nam noticed Lin's unease and tried his best to lighten the mood, but even he couldn't shake the strange feeling that was beginning to settle over him. The darkness around them seemed thicker, the distant sounds of the city muted. It was as though they had stepped into a different world, one where they were no longer alone. The bridge, which had seemed beautiful and serene moments earlier, now felt eerie and isolated, a place where time itself seemed to have stopped. After a while, they decided to ride further across the bridge. As they were riding, Nam suddenly felt an eerie chill, despite the warm night. It wasn't just the cold, it was a weight pressing down on them. The motorbike felt heavier, struggling as if an invisible force was pulling them back. He glanced at Lynn, who was staring straight ahead, her face pale and her eyes wide, her hands gripping him so tightly he could feel her shaking. There was something about the way she looked, almost as if she was seeing something that Nam couldn't, something terrifying. When they finally stopped on the other side of the bridge, Lynn confessed she needed to use the restroom. She climbed down toward the riverbank while Nam waited by the bike. He watched her silhouette disappear into the darkness, but something felt terribly wrong. He blinked, trying to adjust his eyes, and then he saw it. Another figure, a second shadow, faint and almost transparent, moving alongside Lynn, mirroring her steps. It floated, its movements slightly disjointed, as if it was struggling to follow her. Nam called out to Lynn, but his voice felt swallowed by the night, echoing strangely. Lynn quickly returned, her face drained of color. "We need to leave," she whispered, her voice shaking. There was a fear in her eyes that Nam had never seen before. She kept looking over her shoulder, her eyes darting into the darkness, as if expecting something to leap out at them. Nam didn't question her. They got back on the bike and rode in silence, the feeling of being watched clinging to them. Each turn of the road seemed longer and darker. The sound of the motorbike's engine was the only thing that broke the silence, but even that felt muffled. As they neared the bridge again, Lynn suddenly gasped. Nam turned just in time to see a group of children standing by the roadside, staring at them. They were still, no movement, no expressions, just eyes following them as they passed by. And then they were gone, fading into the shadows as if they had never been there. Nam's heart pounded, his breath quickening as the hairs on his neck stood on end. When they finally made it back to Lynn's home, her parents were shocked to see her so distressed. When Lynn's mother saw the pink helmet, her face turned pale. She hurriedly told Lynn to take it off, her hands trembling as she placed it outside. Lynn's father then spoke up, explaining how he had found it by the river. He never imagined that it could be cursed. Lynn's mother was visibly shaken, almost as if she knew that something was terribly wrong with the helmet. The next day, they sought help from a local spiritual healer. I could sense the heaviness in the air as the healer confirmed their fears. The helmet belonged to a young girl who had taken her own life by jumping from the bridge. Her spirit, restless and full of sorrow, had latched onto Lynn, mistaking her for someone who could help. The healer performed an elaborate ritual to appease the spirit, urging them never to take anything found near the river again. The ritual involved incense, prayers, and offerings. The healer explained that the girl's soul was lost, unable to move on, and that objects connected to such spirits could bring misfortune to anyone who possessed them. During the ritual, the healer asked Lynn to describe her dream in detail. As Lynn spoke of the young girl pulling her legs, the healer nodded gravely. The spirit had been searching for someone to help her, but in her confusion and sorrow, she had latched onto Lynn, thinking she could bring her peace. The healer's chants filled the room, the smoke from the incense swirling around them. Lynn felt warmth spreading through her body, and for the first time in days, the heavy feeling began to lift. Nam and Lynn never forgot that night. They avoided the bridge after dark, and the pink helmet was returned to the river with prayers for peace. To this day, CT Bridge remains a haunting reminder of that eerie encounter, and locals often tell tales of strange sights and restless spirits near its waters. Some say they have seen a young girl wandering the bridge late at night, her face pale and her eyes empty, searching for something or someone. Others claim to have heard whispers in the wind, voices calling out from the depths of the river below. Nam and Lynn learned to respect the unseen, the spirits that lingered in the shadows. They knew that some things were better left undisturbed, and that the line between the living and the dead was thinner than they had ever imagined. The experience changed them both. Lynn became more cautious, often visiting temples to pray for protection, while Nam found himself more sensitive to the world beyond what they could see. They knew they had been lucky that night, lucky to have escaped with only a haunting memory and not something far worse. Lynn's family also changed their behavior. Her father no longer brought home anything he found along the river, and her mother kept protective charms around the house. They had learned a valuable lesson about the unseen world that coexisted with theirs. It wasn't just about fear, it was about respect. The river, the bridge, the night. Everything had a spirit, and it demanded reverence. Months later, Nam and Lin returned to the bridge during the day, not to cross it, but to make an offering. They brought incense, flowers, and food, placing them at the foot of the bridge. They bowed their heads in silent prayer, asking for forgiveness and peace. As they stood there, they felt a gentle breeze, and for a brief moment, it was as if a weight had been lifted. The air seemed lighter, and the oppressive feeling that had haunted them for so long was gone. After that, they rarely spoke about the incident. It became a silent understanding between them, a reminder that some stories were better left untold. They focused on their lives, their studies, and their work. But there was always a part of them that remembered the shadows on the bridge, the silent children by the roadside, and the pale face of a lost spirit. It was a memory that lingered, a story they carried in their hearts but rarely shared. Even today, people talk about the CT Bridge. Some say they have seen strange lights hovering over the water late at night, while others claim to have heard the laughter of children where no children should be. The bridge has become a place of mystery, a crossing where the living and the dead sometimes meet. And while most cross it without incident, there are those who, like Nam and Lin, find themselves forever changed by what they encounter there. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to Asian Ghost Story for more spine-chilling tales from across Asia. Your support means everything to us, and we can't wait to share more stories with you. Sleep tight, if you can.